Welcome to North Tees and Hartlepool Voices, telling the stories of our people and community in our trust.
Hi, I'm Andy Tingle, and today I'd just like to welcome the MD of NTH Solutions, Mike Worden, into the studios once again. Welcome, Mike.
Good morning, Andrew. Nice to be here.
Yes, it's always a pleasure to have you here in the
Never
studios.
a chore.
Especially because you're so busy and so hard to get hold of as well. So I brought you in just to ask you a few questions about NTH and about yourself. Can you tell me a little bit about your background? And obviously, have you always worked for the NHS?
Yeah, a good start. So I don't traditionally have a normal NHS background, I would say, personally. I mean, technically, actually, I started in the fish and chip business, as most people do.
Right.
Way back when, obviously, as a kid. But I used to love it. And by the way, my friends used to love it on a Friday night because they were the best fish and chips ever. One portion would cover 4 people. They loved it. But anyway, on a serious note, it isn't a traditional background. I worked in private equity in London, in healthcare-related businesses, but in essence, private equity companies that I worked for would parachute me in to then turn them around operationally to make them a viable business, and then we'd then look to move them on. So down in London, kind of the Monday to Thursday thing for, more years than I really want to count. And then in 2016, just check, when my daughter was actually born, 2016, when my daughter was born, I just wanted to come back north. I was tired of the commute and living out of hotels and bits. So I moved back north, and obviously private equity brings a degree of financial stability with it, which gives you a few options. So I wanted to do something with genuine purpose to add real value somewhere. And then by the luck, I ended up here, and here I've been since for the last kind of nearly 5 years now.
Fantastic. So what is NTH Solutions? What do they do really in the trust? And tell me a little bit about your role within the company.
Sure. So NTH Solutions is a subsidiary of the trust, but in essence, what does that mean? Well, it's a fundamental part of the trust. We deliver all the non-clinical services that the trust needs to be able to kind of function properly, as well as with a commercial revenue side of the trust as well. So not only do we try and deliver all the great services that all the clinical side need to be able to deliver their services effectively, but we actually try and bring money in so that we can actually increase the funds at the financial position of the trust, so that we've got more money to do more good things for patients with. That's fundamentally what we do. It's a bit of an analogy really, but I like to think of it as we're the kind of lifeblood of the trust.
Yeah, like
and
the
I
backbone.
think of it, kind of in a biology way. You've got the heart, the lungs, and all the good stuff that, in essence, in the analogy, the clinical teams would be. They go out there and do all the essential functions that we've got to do. But none of those kind of organs would be able to function properly without a good blood supply.
Yes.
And in essence, all the things that sit in the non-clinical services are the equivalent of that blood supply. We keep it working, we keep it functioning. And I like to think that none of us could do our job without each other. But that's the kind of essential nature of NTH Solutions. But in essence, it's the non-clinical services of the trust.
So a little bit about your role.
So I'm the managing director, not the medical director, as someone said when you call yourself MD of that company. And technically, I guess I'm the ultimate responsible person for the kind of the operational delivery, the financial management, the strategic direction of the company as such, reporting to the board on that. And so from a technical point of view, that would be my role. But the way I view it, and I'm a simple man, so I do like to keep things simple. But I think my role is to create an environment where our people have the opportunity to be the best that they can be. Now, what do I mean by that? It's kind of a big thing to say, but I genuinely believe that my role is to make sure people feel valued, that they're recognised, and they're supported to be the best version of themselves. Because if someone's the best version of themselves, the things that we do will be of the best quality. It will feel good to be part of and to be part of it, and to receive their services. And in essence, in a non-technical way, that's how I kind of see my job. I'm here to help our people. Sorry, I just want to add to that though. Are we there yet? I mean, it would be remiss to think and try and articulate that, we are. I don't think you ever really get there, by the way. It's kind of a continual thing, but we've got a long way to go. But at least if we're on that journey to create that type of place to be, I think that's a good place to start.
What motivates you to get out of bed in the morning and come to work?
Yeah, so, well, I mean, it's going to sound a bit cheesy and people roll their eyes, I would imagine, but do you know what? First, it doesn't feel like work. So in my other careers and jobs that I've held, even though they've been really rewarding and very good in many ways and given me some invaluable experience, they felt like work. And I remember someone telling me that it's that famous saying that, if you do something you love, then you'll never work a day in your life, or words to that effect. But I genuinely have experienced that here. For me, it doesn't feel like work. I genuinely have fallen in love with the people of this area and the people in this organisation. They're very real, very honest, and great people. And that brings me to work. People work for people, I think, and I work for the people here, and I really enjoy it. I mean, don't get me wrong, some days are a chew, aren't they?
Yeah.
I'm talking on averages here. You just can't escape that fact. But it does. I mean, generally, I'm like, great, it's Monday. Let's come to work. I really enjoy my job, and I feel very blessed and lucky to work with the people that I do work with. So I guess that's why I come to work.
The last time you were in the studios, we touched on something called a letter to myself. And this was so inspiring. And I know you're a team player and things like that. I even took it home and I played it to my 15-year-old son, and even his eyes welled up as much as mine did on that day. How do you motivate and inspire your team to deliver those best interests for the Trust?
I mean, first off, thank you for that. That was very kind words. It was a good thing. I enjoyed doing that letter to myself. It was part of my test to make myself vulnerable and to put myself out there. I think actually by doing that, it actually gives you some strength and courage. So thank you for that, Andy. I mean, they're big words, aren't they? That's why I motivate and inspire people. I just come to work and I am who I am. If I may, can I rephrase that slightly?
Yes, of course you
can. Call it imposter syndrome or whatever you want. But I kind of prefer to rephrase that as, how do I feel people are motivated and inspired? And again, I come back to a point I touched on earlier, which is I think it's important to create an environment that people want to be part of and are proud to be part of it, and that they have some purpose within it. There's a kind of a strategy, if you like, that I like to think of when I think about these things. And it works on the basis of, I think if you can give people accountability, the accountability that they get, and of course you've got to hold them accountable, but that accountability makes people feel like they've got a contribution. They can contribute to something. If they contribute to something, then they've got relevance. If someone feels like they're relevant, then they've got purpose.
Yeah.
Purpose usually helps people perform well, so their performance is good. And then performance gives people belief. And I think I would argue until the cows come home that if you work in an organisation where the majority, and obviously this is kind of the majority game in this, if the majority of people have belief in themselves, that's a great organisation to be part of.
Yeah.
That inspires people. It motivates themselves. It's self-generating. So again, I come back to where I started, that no one person can do any of that. But if you can create an environment and then that self-builds itself by allowing people to work for people and to feel part of it, then I think that'll motivate and inspire people. Ultimately, I just come to work and I am who I am.
You do your job.
I do my job.
And being a good leader obviously takes a lot of work. What are your strengths and weaknesses?
Well, if you ask my wife, she'd have a different view to some of this stuff. But my strengths and weaknesses, I don't think it's really for me to say what my strengths are. That's probably for other people to say that. And I'll come to what I know I need to work on more in a moment. My strengths as such. Well, as I just mentioned, I come to work and I am who I am. One of the things that I've learned over time, and I actually mentioned it in that letter to myself, one of the things that I've tried and learned is that I try and act myself, and I know that my inherent values are good, I would say. I try and do the right thing and try and help people. You can't always do that every single time, but inherently I try and do the best that I can do in a situation. So I'd say that my values are okay, they're good values, I would say. And inevitably, just by having the responsibility I do, some people are going to like that, some people are not. Some people have good days, bad days, and you'll annoy some people, you'll help other people, etc., etc. But because I think that my values are about right, that gives a degree of authenticity, I think, to the way that I behave. And then by not having to be liked, if you like, as I put in that letter to myself, I'm very careful with who I give that power to, and it is a power. If you let your own feelings be controlled by how other people judge you, that can be a really difficult position to be in, and can be a very unhappy position. So I think if you've got inherently good values and you behave in a way that reflect those, and you don't have to be liked by everyone on the dog, then that can give you a position of being a good leader. I think, in many ways. Now, no one's ever perfect on these things, and it's always work in progress. But again, on a law of averages, if you can work on that basis, then I think you're probably doing well. In terms of like the stuff I need to work on, and God, do I know these, and I keep kicking myself every time, by the way. So if someone ever learns how to actually learn these things and not keep repeating them, please do tell me. But I definitely need to listen more, and I think most people would agree with that. I think I'm like a goldfish. If I don't speak it, then I forget it. So, Deepak gave me some great advice about writing questions down so that I don't have to interrupt everyone every 2 seconds. I try, but I know it's something I need to do more of. I'm also a doer, so I like to fix things and get things done. And sometimes people just want an ear to listen or to talk to. They don't want someone to fix the thing that they're talking about. And I'm very aware of that. And my default one is to try and help and fix. And I need to be mindful of that. The other bit, I think, is that I am passionate and I do care, and I'm the worst person in the world at poker. I've got the terrible poker face. If I'm annoyed, happy, sad, or whatever it would be, it's written all over my face. So I need to detach a little bit more in situations where I've been triggered or whatever, and not react as much as I do. Literally, I laugh at myself when I do it, because I know I should do it, then I've done it, and I'm like, oh, God, and it's spend half my time unpicking it, and I wish I could do more of that. So there's definitely some things that I need to work on, but I'll leave the strengths for others to say.
And that's the same for us all, I believe.
Yeah, maybe.
And you're saying that obviously you've got a passion. What are you most proud of during your time at NTH Solutions?
Probably two things, really. One is a specific example, and another is a more generic thing. But I think I'm most proud of where NTH Solutions has come from and what it is now. We really have an opportunity and had an opportunity and still have the opportunity to create something very special that people can feel part of. And when I first joined, it was an organisation that had just been set up and was working perfectly fine, but they didn't feel like there was any identity or feeling of belonging. They were searching for, actually, in this new entity that's being created, who are we, what are we? And now when I look back over that time and see how people have grown into leadership roles and the great services that they delivered then, but now we also deliver now, and I think we've enhanced, and also the commercial side of the business and the things that we've managed to bring into the trust from an outwards perspective. I'm really proud of that I've seen some great people grow and do great things, and I'm really proud of that.
I see the branding all over the place, especially throughout the trusts and things like that, throughout the hospitals, and it's jumped leaps and bounds.
It's really important to have an identity to be part of something.
And I believe, obviously, you and your team have done that over the past few years because of the awareness that you've give it throughout the hospitals, even on T-shirts and stuff like that with the staff that are going around that you're supplying to the hospitals and making sure that they're working properly.
The other bit that I think I'm proud from an example side would be how the business or how the people reacted to COVID, to COVID-19. To be part of that was, although obviously and clearly a very difficult time, I was very proud, without being in any way condescending, of the team, the staff, how they reacted, people stepping up, and the way we worked with our trust colleagues. It was literally one team, one dream. You had the likes of MedEngine and Keith and Phil at the time talking about all the different ventilators and how they're going to work, and the consultants were avidly listening and buying in. And then we had people like Stuart that was talking about the oxygen supply and pipe diameters, and we really were ahead of the game. And it was literally in total synergy with our clinical colleagues, who obviously had the tough job to do. But again, by working as a team and everyone doing their piece of the pie and really pulling on that experience. And we've got so much wealth of experience in the business, some real experts in there that people, would be easy to not know of or not have, but they make it work, and that really was at the forefront of it. And if I think about, some of the normal headlines, apart from the oxygen one, it's PPE shortages. Well, the procurement team and everyone in NTH Solutions and in the trust that helped make sure our clinicians never ran out of PPE. I mean, we didn't, we were on the front foot the entire time, and that was not by luck. That was exceptional graft and pulling in favours and but just absolutely doing whatever was needed to make sure that the frontline guys had everything they needed to be safe. And it got close sometimes, but no one really particularly knew about that. But it was tight at times. But we pulled it out of the bag, and Honestly, I was so incredibly proud. I think I'll probably take that to my grave. It was a wonderful experience. Apart from, I don't want to take away from obviously the very difficult nature of the losses that people encountered, but it was good to be part of this team during that and to be part of the trust, I've got to say.
To see it come through the other end is always the best
Yeah.
part of it, isn't it, really?
It was.
And you've learnt lessons as well
Yeah.
for if anything happens in the future, you know that it's right. You can put systems in place and they're already there. What's on the horizons for NTH Solutions? And tell me about anything that's exciting opportunities that's going on.
NTH Solutions is always exciting things going on. I mean, for me, I think the group opportunities, with our colleagues at South Tees, that presents some real opportunities. I think. I mean, obviously everything's got to work out, but the potential for both our organisations to come together to then contribute to the ICB, to the northeast, to the wider geography. I think by working better together, we've got much more opportunity and ability to do things better and at scale. So I don't exactly know, of course, what that will be or what it is at this stage, but I think the potential opportunity is one that we should all be excited about and ready to take advantage of, or if you like, if that's the right word, or maximise when they do present themselves. And I am genuinely looking forward to those conversations at the right time. We've got some wonderful work that's been going on. Steve Bell and Tash that have been working on the stereo wave. So in essence, this is a way of processing our own waste. It, in essence, gets clinical waste, it microwaves it, for lack of a better summary, and then turns it into a usable product that we can then resell. And that's going on. We'll be the first in the UK to do that. It's been a long journey to get it. And again, the team have been fleet of foot in purchasing the equipment out of another business that was in administration. And we've turned that to a real advantage, and we're going to drive income into it, as well as obviously benefiting the sustainability agenda as well. Think about some of the external commercial services we do. So the NHS implant analysis service that we've set up, got a global conference that we're launching in November. I think it's in November in Newcastle, where we've got 10 speakers from all around the world, where in essence we support the analysis of an implant that's been removed from a patient, and then do a whole kind of analytical procedure on that, feed that back then to the clinical teams and to the manufacturers to make sure that in time lessons are learned and patient safety and patient care is improved. And that's really exciting space to watch. We've got some key partners working with us. We've got the Everybody Feels Like Somebody Awards, our second year of running those. So we had our first one last year where we celebrate the excellent work all our staff do, and we have a drink or two as well to celebrate that, which is always a pleasure. So we've got that coming up. I think that's in late November time. And then, actually, I think some people will be aware of it. We managed to partner up with Hardwick Hall Hotel, the Ramside Group, and actually got some heavily discounted tickets for Hardwick Live. And that's coming up soon in August time. And we've got like a yurt that we can all kind of congregate around, and people have had access to tickets and various bits. And I'm looking forward to seeing people in a relaxed social environment and seeing that too. So, and that's just one of many different things, Andy. But I think it's really exciting stuff that's coming on the horizon for us.
Yeah, I mean, listening to you there was a lot of things that I didn't even realise that NTH Solutions ever did. You know, we see the staff walking around the place, we see people with hammers and screwdrivers and fixing things, and we see the buildings and what's going on with new theatres getting built and all that sort of stuff, which is absolutely amazing and
essential. You know, it's
yeah,
what we're here
it is.
For,
It's exactly what you've just said there, and like we said, without NTH Solutions, the building wouldn't be standing. You are the blood that pumps around the place and keeps it going. We're going to finish off just a little bit of humour. If there was going to be a movie written about yourself, who would play your character?
Okay, good one. Well, I don't know who would play my character, but as a bit of a reference, she's going to kill me for this. Someone that I work with said that I looked like a love child between The Rock and Jason Statham. Now, I'm not commenting, I'm not saying, but they said if those two had a kid, it looked something like me. So anyway, maybe a genetic alteration of those two would, something like that.
We'll watch out for Netflix and see what comes up.
Yeah, maybe.
Well, Mike, it's been a total pleasure as always of having you here.
Who would play you?
Who would play me? Probably Homer Simpson. As I said, it's been always a great pleasure to have you in the studios,
really
Mike.
is.
And thank you and your team for what you do for the hospital and for the trusts. And I hope to have you back in here in a couple of months' time, and maybe we could reflect on something and see where we are with the new exciting things that are going on within the trust.
Love to. It's an absolute pleasure, and thank you for all the great work that Radio Stitch does as well. It's wonderful. Thank
Pleasure, Mike. Thank you.
you. Cheers.
Thank you for joining us. Till next time, you've been listening to NTH Voices.